Velkommen alle sammen. Got a new dope hat as a gift. I thought I'd show it off. I meant to do this video a while ago. I've done several videos now on Vikings, the Northmen, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, even God of War. But it slipped my mind that I've actually not even spoken about my absolute favorite portrayal of the Viking Age out of all of them, and that is The Last Kingdom. I recommend everyone watch it if you haven't already. They have 5 seasons, all on Netflix, with the last season that aired about 2 months ago. I'm a little late making this video, but what I'd like to talk about is why is this series my favorite? Is this show historically accurate or inaccurate? And then some bad and good news about the future of the show. So, the reason I hate Vikings and these other Viking-themed TV shows and movies and video games is not only are they historically inaccurate, but they are common sense and brains inaccurate too. I swear, watching Vikings is like watching a horror movie where the main characters just keep doing stupid thing after stupid thing, and you're sitting there like, oh, what did he do that for? Just like a horror movie when the main character runs into the basement that you know the monster is hiding there, and then they get killed, and we were all watching that. I told you so. Watching Vikings pretty much any time after the first couple seasons is the exact same as that. And that's every Vikings TV show or movie in the last 30 years probably, so I'm not picking on just Vikings. But it just leaves anyone who's watching that has an IQ above 75 just cringing, like the plot and the dialogue and screenplay. It's what it would be like if there were a bunch of 5-year-old ill-tempered kids that you just left with swords and let them roam the world. It's an insult to our ancestors and gives us the wrong idea of history, that Vikings were these emotional and reckless people while making their decisions and doing the things that they did. The reality is quite the opposite, actually. The Vikings made their decisions very carefully through thought and planning, and they really tried to do so in the most diplomatic way possible. Now, of course, I know it's TV. They need to create some drama to make it entertaining, and that's how The Last Kingdom goes. It keeps it entertaining, and it's still full of drama and bad things and good things, while still making it realistic as to what's going on in the show. Other Viking-themed TV shows and movies, honestly, almost all of them have just shitty and lazy screenplay writers. Simple as that. It's people who are not good at their jobs. This is the historical accuracy that I really care about. I don't really care about inaccurate clothes or weapons or haircuts or whatever. As you can see, I don't even care about inaccurate Viking helmets. What I care about in historical accuracy is the important things, like what were our ancestors actually like? How did they think? What types of decisions did they make? What their culture was like, and what were their view to the world was like. And I feel like Last Kingdom does an amazing job at portraying this in the correct way according to the historical sources. However, there are some inaccuracies that I would like to bring up here. So, The Last Kingdom is not actually based on any detailed historical accounts from the Middle Ages or Viking Age. The Last Kingdom is actually based on the Saxon Stories, which is a series of novels written from about 2004 to 2020. And apparently, the story has stayed very close to the books, but I haven't gotten a chance to read them yet, but I will. But it is fiction. However, the author, Bernard Cornwell, he's not some crappy New Age novelist just trying to be a Viking. He is actually very, very educated with deep knowledge of the time and history. And I think he was an actual history teacher too, and you can tell the story of The Last Kingdom is loosely based on the events going around the late 800s, around the time of Alfred the Great in England and the Danelaw and the Viking invasions. It's not super accurate according to the real events that we have records of from the time, but it's very close. It's close enough. It's definitely close enough to the major events at least to make it realistic, but also entertaining for the most part. So Bernard Cornwell is very knowledgeable about this time in history, and he has a lot of respect for this time in history. In fact, apparently he is descended from the real historical figure Uhtred the Bold, which in the TV show is Uhtred. It's loosely based off of him, but the time frame is about 100 years apart. My point is, though, that this story is not written by some Hollywood-type producer with the aim of creating unnecessary drama and shitting all over our ancestors. The Last Kingdom is actually written by a descendant, and he actually cares about painting his ancestors in a good light and keeping as true to the historical sources as possible. However, he's English, so he's going to make the English look a little bit better, of course. We all have biases, that's okay, but right here on this YouTube channel we are Norse, so he doesn't paint our ancestors in the best way and in the most accurate light, specifically the Danes. Now, one of the things I don't like about the Last Kingdom's portrayal of the Vikings is the idea that they were just savages who came around raiding and burning and taking the women as slaves, and they were just filthy, lawless barbarians. When in fact, the opposite is actually true. First, I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. England really did not get raided that bad by the Vikings. Places like Francia did, but we only really have a handful of raids recorded on England, and none of them are as bad as portrayed in a lot of these movies and TV shows, Last Kingdom included. Second thing that bothers me, the cleanliness. The idea that the Vikings were just dirty pigs and horribly groomed, and the English were all nice and clean and orderly. The truth is, the Vikings were actually much cleaner and better mannered and more well-groomed than the English. So much, in fact, that they actually were able to woo many of the English noblemen away from their husbands by choice. This is an English source writing this, by the way, so it's not just me being biased of the Vikings. Also, the Vikings' treatment of women and the slaves in the TV show I did not like, when in reality women and slaves were treated better in the Viking Age than pretty much anywhere else in Europe at that time. I've done a whole series on the channel about that where I speak about it. So that's about it. Everything else in the show I love. It is about as accurate as can be, and once again, the reason I really love it is the screenplay and how relatable it is, and you can really see yourself in those situations in the show. Final parts, good and bad news. Bad news, season 5 that just finished a couple months ago, that was the final season, and that's a bummer. The good news, if you've read the books and you saw the final season, you know that there's a little bit more left. I have to say, I was pretty butthurt when The Last Kingdom ended, because now the only thing we're going to have to watch in the next few years is Vikings Valhalla. But one of my friends who has actually read all the books told me some good news about it recently, and he said that there is one book left that is to be made into a show. I looked it up, and it's not going to be made in a show at all, but it's going to be made into a movie. They just finished filming it now, and it's set to release on Netflix later this year. I think they could have gone to theaters with it. I think it really is that good. It can definitely do well in the theaters, but you kind of have to watch all 5 seasons to get it, so that's the way it has to be, I guess. So go ahead and watch all of it. If you haven't already, I'll be watching all the seasons of Last Kingdom again a bit later in the year, ahead of when the movie comes out, and of course I'll release updates on this channel as soon as I find out more. But that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Vi ses nästa gång.